Hello students, good evening. Welcome to the season 2 of the Prelims High series. This is the 11th session and we discuss 10 questions per session. So 10 sessions are over, meaning we have completed almost 100 questions. These questions, they have very high probability of appearing in the 2021 Prelims. So without any further delay, let's get into the next bunch of questions. Let's look at the first question. This is from Polity. With reference to the administration of union territories in India, consider the following statements. Why this question is here? Because we have been seeing the news related to administration of UTs, be it New Delhi or be it Pondicherry or any other union territory for that matter. There has been continuous clash between the lieutenant governor, the CM there, or how the UTs have to be maintained, etc. So this question is influenced by current affairs, but this is from the static part. Every union territory is administered by the president acting through an administrator appointed by him. That is, it is administered by the president, but he acts via the administrator or the lieutenant governor, etc. The president can also appoint the governor of a state as administrator of an adjoining union territory. Meaning, this statement says or asks, can a governor of a state can also be a governor of an union territory? That's what the second statement asks. The legislative power of the president for the union territory on subjects of the state list remain unaffected even when establishing a local legislature for them. Meaning, if for states like Delhi, Pondicherry, etc., they have their own legislature, even then, does the president have the same power on subjects in the state list? That is the third question. So I've explained you all the three statements. Now tell me which will be the correct answer. I'll give you a few seconds to answer. So now I hope you have come to a conclusion now. Let's look at the correct answer. The correct answer is 1 and 2 only. The third statement is wrong in some way. Let's look at why it is the wrong statement. So this is why this statement, as I told you, is in news. There have been continuously some sort of headlines dominating the newspaper because of the administration of union territories, be it Puducherry or Jammu Kashmir, etc. So, in the explanation part, Article 239 to 241 of Part 8 of the Constitution deals with the union territories. Every union territory is administered by the president acting through an administrator who is appointed by the president himself. Okay, an administrator of union territory is an agent of the president and not head of a state like a governor. Governor is the agent of the center, whereas an administrator of union territory is agent of the president. Okay, let's look at the third point. The president can also appoint the governor of a state as administrator of a adjoining union territory also. Meaning a governor can be the head for two states or union territories. In that capacity, the governor is to act independently of his council of ministers. Parliament can make laws on any subject of the three lists, that is state list, concurrent list and central list for the union territories. This power of parliament also extends to Puducherry and Delhi, which have their own legislature. In the question, it was given that the legislature power of the president remains unaffected. It is not actually the president, but the parliament. Okay. This means that the legislative power of parliament for the union territories on subjects of the state list remain unaffected even after establishing a local legislature, as in the case of Delhi, Puducherry. But the Legislative Assembly of Puducherry can also make laws on any subject of the state list and concurrent list. Similarly, for Delhi also, they can make laws on any subject on the state list and concurrent list. The parliament has more powers, not the president, as given in the question. Let's move on to the second question. This question is from economy. Consider the following statements regarding off-budget financing. As the name suggests, have some idea of budget, something that is off the budget. Off-budget financing isn't taken into account when calculating fiscal indicators like fiscal deficit. While fiscal deficit calculation, we do not take into consideration the things that comes out of the budget. Parliamentary control on such spending is also reduced. National Small Savings Fund is the biggest source for the government for off-budget financing. Which of the statements are correct? I'll give you 10 seconds to analyze the question and answer. So I hope you would have arrived an answer by now. The correct answer is all these statements are correct. B option, all the statements are correct. First, I'll tell you what is off-budget financing. By nature, it isn't taken into account, as the name suggests, okay? When calculating fiscal indicators, this refers to expenditure that is not funded through the budget. Off-budget financing, by its nature, isn't taken into account when calculating fiscal indicators like fiscal deficit, revenue deficit, primary deficit, etc. But the cost is borne by the budget through some mechanism or the other. Such financing tends to hide the actual extent of the government spending, borrowings, debt, increase the interest burden, etc. So, if we go out of the budget, some things that are not in the budget, then we cannot properly calculate what are the fiscal indicators. The governments began harnessing funds from outside the budget to service its budget commitments since 2016. This practice of off-budget financing started in 2016. The size of this initiative has grown more than twofold in a few years, and now nearly 1% of GDP is off-budget financed. What began with food security, off-budget finance now caters heavily to a range of four spending areas. This may remain high or rise in 2021 and 22. This is the reason why this was in news, okay? The reason is the National Small Savings Fund, which is the biggest source of such spending, is growing faster than ever this year. In a year when average incomes have not grown much, people have poured money for savings for social security. So people have, since they have very little disposable amount, and the habits of Indians is usually to save money rather compared to the Western part of the people who focus more on spending the money, we focus more on saving the money. Therefore, this National Small Savings Fund, which is a major source of off-budget financing, this has increased this year. What are off-budget borrowings? The loans that are taken by any public institution and not by the center directly is called as off-budget borrowing. Since we were talking about off-budget financing, I thought you should know about this also. The public institution borrows on the direction of central government. Though the central government doesn't directly borrow, the blessing is given by the central government. These borrowings are used to fulfill the expenditure needs of the government. Under such borrowing norms, center used to finance its expenditure while keeping the debt off the books. Thus, debt is not counted while calculating the fiscal deficit. The liability of the loan is not formally on the center and it is not included because center is not directly involved in the borrowing, correct? So the liability does not fall on the center, but some public institution. Thus, it helps the fiscal deficit of the country within acceptable limits. But this also, even if the fiscal deficit is within the limits, but off-budget borrowings is more, that means the country is eventually failing only. How are these borrowings raised? The governments raise the borrowing by asking the implementing agency to raise the required funds from the market by loans, either by loans, it can get loans, external loans, or through by issuing bonds, etc. The borrowings can also be raised through public sector banks, where public sector banks can be asked to fund off-budget expenses of the government. For example, loan from PSBs were utilized for meeting shortfall in releasing the fertilizer subsidy. This happened once when the government had to face a lot of fertilizer subsidy. It has to issue a lot of fertilizer subsidy. So what had happened was the government, instead of directly buying loans or raising funds or issuing bonds, what it did was it asked the public sector banks to do it so that the liability does not fall on the central government per se, but it falls on the public sector banks. I'll give you another example for off-budget funding in financial year 17. Revenue spending, if you take in the revenue spending area, fertilizer arrears or bills were done through banking arrangements. Food subsidy and bills of Food Corporation of India were matched with the borrowings done from external sources. AIBP program, Accelerated Irrigation Benefit Program, this was done by NABARD. In all these cases, the central government did not directly involve. That is why it is called as off-budget financing or borrowing. Capital spending, Indian Railway Finance Corp, IRFC, borrowing for railway projects. And then the Power Finance Corporation, it started funding for power projects because that is one of the major area where the state government majority of the debt of the state government is due to power distribution, power subsidies, etc. Let's move on to the third question. This question is from international relations. ASEAN plus 3 includes which of the following countries? We know ASEAN includes 10 countries. I'll tell you a mnemonics for that. Before that, ASEAN, we have ASEAN is 10 countries. What are the plus 3 countries that is included in this act? China, India, Japan, Australia. What are the 3 countries or what are the countries that are included in this? I'll give you a few seconds to answer this question. So now the correct answer is 1 and 3. That is China is included, Japan is included. What is the third country? That is South Korea. Okay. So these are the 10 countries that are included in ASEAN. The mnemonics I told you is, remember we have heard about ASEAN TV, correct? So BPL TV mimics, MIMCS. Totally 10 countries are there. B is Brunei, P Philippines, L is Laos, T Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia. Remember Indonesia, not India. India is not part of ASEAN. Okay. Myanmar, Cambodia, and Singapore. These are the 10 countries. You can have this mnemonics as a your trick. So what are the ASEAN-led forums? ASEAN Regional Forum or ARF. This was launched in 1993. It has 27 members, including the 10 members. And this multilateral grouping was developed to facilitate cooperation on political and security issues. The main aim is confidence building measures, contribute to the confidence building measures, and preventive diplomacy. Preventive diplomacy means if there is some tension between two countries and there is scope of the issue escalating, then diplomacy or talks between the two nations will happen, and via diplomatic channels and diplomatic measures, that mishappening will be prevented. That is preventive diplomacy. The next ASEAN-led forum is ASEAN plus 3, that is APT. This is a consultative group that was initiated in 1997. It aims to bring together the 10 members plus China, Japan, and South Korea. Okay. Next ASEAN-led forum is East Asia Summit. This was first held in 2005. This seeks to promote security and prosperity in the region, and it is usually attended by the heads from the states of ASEAN, that is the 10 countries we saw, and then Australia, India, China, Japan, New Zealand, Russia, South Korea, United States also. So the Western state that takes part in the East Asia Summit is United States. ASEAN plays a central role as the agenda setter. These are the ASEAN-led forums. Moving on, a quick view of what is ASEAN. ASEAN is actually the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. It is a regional organization which was established to promote political and social stability among the rising tensions in the Asia Pacific. This happened in the post-colonial states. So ASEAN is mainly for Asia Pacific countries. The motto is one mission, one identity, one community. 8th August is the ASEAN Day, and the Secretariat of ASEAN is in Indonesia, Jakarta. Remember this, okay? So, moving on to the fourth question, reports and indices. Economic Freedom Index, which was published recently, is released by which of the following organization? You can take a guess in this question. World Bank, IMF, the Heritage Foundation, which is a think tank, and then US Chamber of Commerce. So the correct answer is C, the Heritage Foundation. This is a US-based think tank. That is the correct answer. Moving on, Heritage Foundation, a US conservative think tank, recently launched the Economic Freedom Index. In this index, it was topped by Singapore. The global ranking is topped by it for the second consecutive year. This index was prepared covering 184 countries for 2019 to 2020. Overall, the score of Singapore increased by 0.3%. It was about 89.7. These are very minute details. We don't have to remember all this. This increased primarily because of the improvement in score for the government spending. Since the government spent more money during this pandemic time, this happened before the pandemic. So during this time, since the government spending was more and more, the economic freedom of the people was more. The score obtained by Singapore is well above the regional and the world average even. Hong Kong was not considered to prepare this year's index for the first time, which has topped the list for 25 years out of 26 years before this index. Usually, this economic freedom index is either topped by Hong Kong or Singapore, but this time Hong Kong is left out of the index. To know a little about this index of economic freedom, it is an annual index and ranking. It was created in the year 1995 by a think tank called as the Heritage Foundation and Wall Street Journal. This measures the degree of economic freedom among world's nations. This index is inspired by Adam Smith, who is a very famous and one of the prodigy in economics. His approach in the wealth of the nations, which states that the basic institutions which protect the liberty of the individuals to pursue their economic interest in turn result into the greater prosperity of bigger society. He gave more importance to economic freedom. Where there is more economic freedom, then people or individuals can pursue their own interests. Like if they want to set up a factory, they want to start a business, etc. If they have more freedom in the economic interest, then the society will prosper soon. So moving on to the next question from environment or geography area. If you keep walking on the Mediterranean coast, starting from the coast of Egypt, in Egypt, we know there has been continuously a lot of issues going on. So from that current affairs, this map-based question is inspired. Towards Middle East, that is from Mediterranean coast to Middle East. This is Mediterranean coast to Middle East. You're likely to touch the coast of which of these countries on your route? Okay. Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, and Israel. I'll give you a few minutes to close your eyes, visualize the map of the Middle East, and answer this question. So the correct answer is 2, 3, and 4. Iraq will not be there because, have a look at this map. Iraq is somewhere in the interior part. So when you walk along the coast of Mediterranean Sea from Egypt, that is, even if you start from here and walk towards Middle East, you are likely to touch the countries of Egypt and then Israel and then Lebanon, etc. Even you will not touch Jordan. Syria, you might touch, but that was not given in the option, so let's omit it. But Iraq, we have to right away eliminate it because it is kind of not touching, not even closer to the Mediterranean coast. Have a look at this map. So, next one. Paperless licensing process for the petroleum service station has been launched through Petroleum and Explosive Safety Organization. This is the organization that checks the quality of the crackers that is produced for Diwali, etc. And then this gives the proposal of how much the noise pollution it should cause, what are the composition of green crackers, etc. So the question is about PESO only. PESO, that is Petroleum and Explosive Safety Organization, comes under which ministry? Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, Commerce and Industry, Road Transport and Highways, Ministry of Home Affairs. I'll give you a few seconds to answer this question. So the correct answer is Commerce and Industry. I know many of you would have guessed this Petroleum and Natural Gas. But remember, this is what are the safety standards for any explosives. Explosive does not come under Ministry of Petroleum, correct? So we could have right away eliminated that. PESO has taken various measures to ensure uninterrupted supply of oxygen to hospitals and other healthcare facilities due to nationwide lockdown for containment of COVID pandemic. So that is why this was in news. This is another reason why this was in news. So PESO is an office under Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, that is DPIIT, which is under Ministry of Commerce and Industry. It is under DPIIT. It was established in way behind, that is in 1898 itself, as a nodal agency for regulating safety of substances such as explosive, compressed gases, petroleum, etc. So this was established during the British era. Its head office is located in Nagpur, Maharashtra, remember. Moving on to question number 7, Prime Minister of India inaugurated the Maitri Setu between India and which country via video conferencing today, that is March 9, 2021. This happened just a few hours before this video was being recorded. So the answer to this question, I have another clue in the question itself, Maitri. This is a name of the exercise that happens between India and another country. If you could guess that, you will be getting an answer for this question. So I'll give you a few seconds to answer this question. I know most of you would have got this question correct. So the correct answer is Bangladesh. Maitri Setu, it is actually a bridge that is being built in the river Feni. Feni River flows between the Indian boundary in the state of Tripura and Bangladesh. The name Maitri Setu has been chosen to symbolize the growing bilateral relations and friendly ties between both the countries. There is a dam between India and Afghanistan that is called as Friendship Dam. India-Afghanistan Friendship Dam. So most of our bilateral relation revolves around such kind of names. The construction of the bridge was done by the National Highways and Infrastructure Development Corporation of India. The total cost is about 133 crores. It's 1.9 kilometer long. All these we don't have to know, just these are raw facts. This connects Sabroom in India, which is in Tripura, and Ramgarh in Bangladesh. The inauguration of the bridge will establish a new chapter of doing the trade and people-to-people movement between the countries. After this bridge is operational, the Indian state of Tripura will become the gateway of North India. Since geographically, Northeast India seems to be detached from the mainland of India, because the only point of connection is the Chicken's Neck or Silguri corridor. So we are trying to make or trying our best to make sure that the prominence to Northeast India is not lost. This initiative comes under that aim only. This port is located at the distance of 18 kilometers from Sabroom. So here is the map of this Sabroom. This is Sabroom in Indian side. The blue color is River Feni, and this is the Bangladesh border. So this bridge lies between Sabroom and somewhere Ramgarh in Bangladesh. Okay. Moving on, let's move on to question number 8. What is common between Chakyar Kootu, Kudiyattam, Krishnattam, Ramanattam? These are 4 types of important dances. So what is common between these dances? They are all ritual performing arts. It originated from Kerala. They have had some influence on Kathakali in its form and technique. So I'll give you a few seconds to answer this question. So the correct answer is all these statements are correct. They are all ritual performing arts. They have their origin in Kerala only, and they have some influence on Kathakali. Maybe if I show you a picture, you'll be able to visualize this properly. Before that, Kathakali as a dance form popular today is considered to be comparatively of recent origin, meaning Kathakali, it does not have very much of ancient roots. Rather, it is a dance that has been that has been molded by various other dance features. However, it is an art which has evolved from many social and religious theatrical forms which existed in the southern region in ancient times. Chakyar Kuthu, Kodiyattam, Krishnattam, Ramanattam are few of the ritual performing arts of Kerala which have had a direct influence on Kathakali, be it its form or its technique. Legend has it that the refusal of the Zamorin of Calcutta to send his Krishnattam troupe to Travancore so enraged the Raja that he was inspired to compose the Ramanattam. There are various stories about it. You just don't have to know it. I'm just telling you so that you'll be able to remember it properly. So this is the Chakyar Kuttu. This is the dance form of Kudiyattam, and this is Krishnattam, and this is Ramanattam. If I show you the image of Kathakali, this is Kathakali. As you can see, it has influence from all these dance forms. Here, as you can see, the face has more influence here, but the crown that they have in place, that is influence from Kudiyattam, and then the dance form, the dress, that is influence from Ramanattam, the facial paintings, dance moves, that is influence from Chakyar Kuttu. So Kathakali, the one thing that you have to know is Kathakali is of recent origin only, and it is influenced by all these dances. So consider the following statement with respect to nurturing neighborhood challenge. This scheme is launched in the Ministry of Women and Child Development. This initiative will support cities to develop pilot and scale solutions that enhance the quality of life of young children, their caregivers, families in the public realm. So either first statement should be correct or second statement should be correct, because the aim is to support the cities to develop into a proper place where family has more importance. So either the first statement, the ministry should be wrong, or the second statement should be wrong. Let's see which one it is. The answer is 2 only, because this is not done by Ministry of Women and Child Development, rather Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. This has launched an initiative called as Nurturing Neighborhoods Challenge. The focus is mainly to shape the cities for younger children and their families. It is a 3-year initiative that will support cities to develop pilot and scale solutions that enhance the quality of life of mainly younger children, their caregivers, families, etc. in their public realm. Meaning the cities will not be very congested. It will allow people to have a walk during the evening time, have more green spaces so that people can come and play, the kids can come and play, their physical and mental health is balanced, etc. It will be open to all smart cities and other cities with more than 5 lakh population. That is the only criteria. And the capitals of states and union territories. These cities will receive technical assistance and help in capacity building to reimagine parks and open spaces, improve access to early childhood facilities, public spaces with childhood-oriented amenities. That is, for example, if we are designing something for disabled friendly, then we should have a ramp. We should have a proper facility that there is a lift facility, etc. Similarly, if we have to design for childhood or that is children friendly, then we should make sure that the spaces are designed in such a way. Create accessible, safe, walkable streets. If we are going to create a park in the midst of a city, then we should make sure that there are not much vehicles there, not much air pollution is there, noise pollution is there. Similarly, these are some of the design features that we have to take into account. Moving on to the last question of the day from miscellaneous, the GI tag that has been sought for one of the costliest mushrooms in the world that grows in which of the following states or union territories in India? This was in news recently. The 1 kg of this mushroom costs about 20,000 or more. I'll give you a few seconds to guess the answer. Is it Kerala, Meghalaya, Pondicherry, or Jammu Kashmir? So the correct answer is Jammu and Kashmir. This is that mushroom. This mushroom is called as Gucci mushroom. They have chosen this term because it is one of the costliest brands of women handbags, etc. Gucci mushroom, it is a species of fungi or fungus in the family Mortiolaceae. I'm not very sure I'm pronouncing it correct. They are pale yellow in color with large pits and ridges on the surface of the cap raised on a large white stem. As you can see here, it has a large stem and then pits and fall. It looks like a honeycomb. It is primarily obtained from the forests and pastures of Doda district that is found in high altitudes of Kupwara, Shopian, etc. All these are in the a state of or union territory of Jammu and Kashmir. It is one of the costliest mushrooms in the world, for which it is known as spongy, honeycombed head, and savory flavor. That's why it's very costly. It's very rare, and also it has a lot of health benefits. They are rich in antioxidant, antimicrobial properties that prevent health issues including heart diseases, diabetes by removing reactive oxygen species that harm the body. So what it does is once it gets into the body, it removes that reactive oxygen which is very bad for human health and make sure only good oxygen circulates in the body. They are also considered as rich source of protein, potassium, copper, carbohydrates, and vitamin B. The exotic wild mushrooms are used in pulaus and served during celebratory occasions such as marriages. On this occasion, I would also like to introduce you to this glowing mushrooms. These mushrooms, they are found in the northeast India, especially in Meghalaya. This new species was first sighted near a stream in Meghalaya in East Khasi Hills district and later in Jaintia Hills also. It is now one among the 97 known species of bioluminescent fungi, meaning it can emit light. As you can see, during night time, they can glow. Bioluminescence is the property of a living organism to produce and emit light. For example, humans, we cannot produce light, we can only emit light, or we are usually opaque in nature. Whereas these fungi or these mushrooms, they are bioluminescent, meaning they can produce their own light, they can emit their own light. These organisms are usually found in ocean environment, but they are also found in terrestrial, that is land also. In the case of fungi, the luminescence comes from the enzyme luciferase. This is an important term. The green light emits when luciferase is catalyzed by the enzyme luciferase in the presence of oxygen. This is the chemical reaction that is the reason for emission of this green light. Okay. Now, moving on. This is the end of this session 11. I'll quickly review or recap what were the things that we saw in this video. Administration of UTs, what were the things that we have, even if a UT has legislature, does the president or parliament have powers to implement things that are in the state list? That was what discussed in this question. And off-budget financing and off-budget borrowing, is it good or bad, etc. ASEAN plus 3, that is the 10 plus China, Japan, and South Korea. Economic Freedom Index, it is released by who? What is the score of India? The first country to, the country that has scored number 1 is Singapore. And this time, remember, Hong Kong was left out of the index. Mediterranean coast, we saw which of the countries that are landlocked. For example, Iraq is landlocked, Jordan is landlocked, etc. Peso, we thought that this comes under the Organization of Petroleum, under the Ministry of Petroleum, but actually it comes under Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Then Maitri Setu between India and Bangladesh on River Feni. Kathakali and the related art forms which we saw. Nurturing Neighborhoods Challenge done by Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. And then the one of the world's costliest mushroom, Gucci mushroom. And we also saw about glowing mushroom of Meghalaya. One additional information. Okay. So that's all about this session. I hope this session was useful. And these are some of the important questions that we thought have high chances for this prelims 2021. Stay tuned for the upcoming sessions and kindly follow this regularly to get the best out of this initiative. So if you have any doubts, kindly leave in the comment section below. We promise you to revert back with the detailed explanation. Thank you.